some people give you tips when you work, right? They give you $10, $20, bottle of whiskey, a rolled joint, whatever,
Hawaiian shirts.
I was at this guy's house one time and he goes, "Do you accept tips?" And I was like, "I don't feel needed, but if you want to give me something, like, of course, I appreciate anything you're willing to offer me." He gave me, I can't remember if this guy was the guy that gave me a book by Plato or one by Aristotle. Because I got Plato and Aristotle from different customers at different times.
Wow.
and I came home and I'm reading this book and I'm going like, this book is like been translated and moved forward, but it's like some of the stuff's older than Jesus. And it still applies to today. Like it's still identifying holes in psychology today. And I said, if we haven't learned from this stuff in 2,000 years, there's no hope. Like there's no hope of anybody really catching up, I don't think. And it left me feeling very dark. And it made me want to become more of a philosopher, like almost like I can find a way to get it into people's heads, and I still philosophize. I don't know if I'm saying that properly. I still go on about this stuff, and it's because like, I do feel like the bits I've learned have given me that slight edge over the average person because I do know that stuff. And I might make less mistakes than the average person because I'm like, oh, this is the mistake I was trying to avoid. Because you see some people will make the same mistake over and over again their whole life and never learn from it, right? So sometimes having that philosophy in your head plus the mistake gives you the remedy, like you're like, oh my God, I can't do that again.
We are the same animals that existed in the times of the Greek philosophers or the Roman writers or long before that, before anything was ever really written down. We can see it in the cave art on the walls and all that kind of stuff. We see it in places like Egypt and all the kind of things that they were up to. And while some of it is very mysterious and we don't quite get it, there's other parts of it that are, we're the same creatures. But I think we do slowly crawl our way there, little by little. There are the great movements that move things on, like emancipation and all that kind of stuff, and the advent and distribution of democracy is important. That gives people a voice, and then the internet is giving people a voice. So it's like a cycle where we go forward, back, but we're always going a little bit more forward. And I know a lot of people would say that that's not true. That that it's all, we're actually descending into something that's ultimately going to be chaotic and terrible and awful. I don't personally believe that. I don't see signs of that. What I see is the opposing forces are more or less in balance, but the balance, whatever the energy is, it takes us forward. So in the developed countries, in the English speaking world, in Europe, North America, parts of Asia, things are good. Life is good for certain quarters of people, generally speaking. So I'm quite hopeful, and philosophy plays a part in that because it gives you this, especially if you go back to Plato and the idea of Platonic forms and all that kind of stuff. Plato's one of his big ideas, I don't know all of them, but one of his big ideas was that there are these forms, like love is a Platonic form and hatred is the obverse of that, and all this kind of stuff, and that these forms are somehow baked into existence, whether you attribute it to God or whatever. There's that kind of grounding of thought that filters through to the people who need to use it in order to make things better. And I think generally speaking, those things are used. There's not a lot in philosophy that's applicable to everyday life. Like, where am I going to buy my toilet rolls? There's no philosophy in where you buy your toilet rolls. It's just you need to find your toilet rolls, and if there's a pandemic on, everybody's bought the toilet rolls, and you're wiping your arse with a rag. So there's no philosophy in that, other than the Stoicism, which is a kind of philosophy, I suppose, where you just get on with things. But generally speaking, I quite think that philosophy is useful from that point of view. But I still think it exists in the gaps. In the places where things are not good enough is where you turn to philosophy. You don't solve a problem and then turn to philosophy. You turn to philosophy because you can't solve the problem, or you want to find out how the problem was thought about in Plato's time or in the Roman times or whatever. That's my feeling on it. But all these things are incredibly useful. They continue to be useful, but so much of philosophy has gone. Like the thing you quite often hear if you're looking at, if you're investigating quantum stuff and the nature of reality, you'll hear that the Greeks had a philosophy of the atom. Well, that was one of thousands of philosophies that they had. That was one guy wrote a couple of paragraphs one time about the idea that maybe reality's just lots of little things all stuck together. And I think he called them atoms, or the Greek word for that, or maybe that was the Greek word. But it doesn't mean that they had a whole philosophy of atoms and that they knew the secret about atoms then. It was just an idea. So now we celebrate it because it turns out there are atoms. And that is the way it was. But what about all the other stuff that they had, which has turned out to be complete bollocks? So you can't rely on philosophy. It's only a way of... Or you can't rely on any kind of systemic thinking. Every system of thought has its own... the destruction of it built into it, So you can't rely on anything, but you can use it,
True. You're right. And the philosophy that's useful is like the adages, the ones that get repeated over time.
Yes.
Because those are the ones that have been hammered in time and been tempered, right? Because they got bearing to the average human being,
Yeah.
Because I used to hate, when I was a kid, I used to hate adages. I used to think, I'm sick of hearing these things over and over and over again.
All right.
But as they ring true, as I get older, I'm like, oh my God.
Yes.
I should have listened to that one. Should have listened to this one. Maybe I'll listen to the next one.
But we tell our kids all these stupid philosophies. Like I went through a phase of crossing my eyes a lot. I loved to cross my eyes because it was just like made everything look really weird. And my mother would always say, if the wind changes, you'll stick. You'll stick like that. And I used to uncross my eyes and think, well, I hope the wind doesn't change. And I thought, what other things can the wind do? What? And then, of course, you realise, because I was a very gullible child. I'm still a gullible adult, really, but I was a gullible child, and I didn't realise that was not a thing, But we tell our kids these things to get them to... So these adages, yeah, so no doubt you had a few of them as well when you were growing up.
Yeah, I mean, like that one there wasn't one, but I mean, like things, I'm trying to think of ones like this one's more humorous and lowbrow, but like when you talk about women, you can't live with them, you can't live without them. Right? Like I used to think that was a dumb thing to say, but until you're in a committed relationship with somebody, you understand what that means, right? Because they drive you nuts. You want to you want to throw them out a window sometimes. But at the same time, like, you can't imagine.
They do. Yeah. Why is that? Why does it have to be like that? Oh my God!
I don't know.
My wife's ill just now. My wife's got the cold or flu sort of thing just now. So thankfully she's okay, but she's through there sort of like sweating and coughing and stuff. But she's the worst ill person in the world.
Oh yeah.
I better watch out she doesn't catch me saying this. She won't listen to the podcast, so it's all right. But she gets really miserable, and it's somehow it's all my fault. I don't know how it's my fault. I don't know why I'm in the frame here for something that she's done herself. It's like, yeah, but like you say, you can't live with them, you can't live without them. It's like they're different species. They are completely different species.
Yeah, and when I was younger, I used to think that men are from Mars, women from Venus thing was a bunch of nonsense, but the longer you're with them, the more you realize how different we are.
Have you seen the Bill Burr's bit on when he encounters the lesbian?
I haven't seen that one yet. No.
He's what?
I was just gonna say I always like this bit about don't tell me there's no reason to hit a woman.
Yes, well that's yeah. Ooh, yeah. Taken out of context, that doesn't sound right at all.
You're right.
But the bit is very funny. It's Gay Pride Week or something like that, and he's acting in something, and he's got a mustache. He has to have a mustache for the acting. So he's in New York, Gay Pride Week, and he looks gay. And he was really disappointed because none of the guys looked at him because he's too old now. That was the joke. But he's walking along the street and he sees this woman coming towards him, and he thinks, oh, and he thinks lesbian. And the audience goes, whoa, and he says, yeah, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking you can't tell a lesbian just by looking at him. He says, but you can. She was. And so he's walking towards her, and he realizes he'll have to step sideways to avoid her. So he steps sideways to avoid her, and she steps sideways so she'll hit him, and he steps the other way, so that he can get past her. But she steps that way too. She's intent on hitting him, and she barrels into him. She's got this sour face, and she barrels into him, and he's like, what the fuck is going? Why did she do that? And he's really annoyed about it. And then it strikes him. Oh, she's a lesbian. She's got to live with a woman too. So I thought it's a brilliant bit. It's much better when you hear him do it than it is when I do it, obviously. But I thought, yeah, it's like there's a certain thing about women are wonderful. Don't get me wrong. Women are great. Everybody's great.
You can't live without them.
You can't live without them. But there's just sometimes when their priorities are just completely different from mine, at least. When Ali's, I'm sure I drive Ali insane. At times when I know that I do because she tells me. But we've been together for 40 years, 40 very odd years. But you just get used to it. You just get sort of like, you try, and I think when you're younger and your passions are a bit more extreme, it seems more dreadful when you have an argument or when you have some kind of dissonance between you. It seems existential. That's it. The marriage is over. All that stuff. But then as you get older, it's just it doesn't matter that much. It's just like, yeah, okay, whatever. And so when we used to argue, we wouldn't speak to one another for like quite a while afterwards. Sometimes it would last into the next day, but that doesn't happen now. If we do have words, 5 minutes later, it's fine.
Yeah, Megan and I are getting there too, and sometimes, like in my head, I'm like, I'm not talking to her for days, and then she'll come in and be like, I don't want to fight. She'll like right after the fight, I don't want to fight, and I'm like, and I think like, I'm really happy she did that, and then so sometimes I'm the one who does it, sometimes she's the one that does it.
Yeah.
And the thing, and we may have talked about this before, but the thing I love about Megan the most is that, like she likes me to be the leader between the two of us, and she does follow me, like it's like if I to my core values, if I feel something needs to happen or we need to make a decision, she's like, I'll go and do whatever you want us to do. Like, and she might question some things along the way, and she might be upset if I make a bad move, but she still stands by me, and it's good. Like she's a very traditional woman that way, and that's why that's one of the things I like about her, and I hope it stays that way. I hope we stay strong that way forever, Oh,
I think you probably will. I mean, I don't think people change like that unless something drastic happens. But Ali's the same. Ali has her own things that she does and all that kind of stuff. But obviously we have a life together, and I do different things. She does different things. But when we have to do stuff together, it's she supports me and I support her. That's the way that we work it. So, and that's great. It's great to have that. It's great to have that in your life, and I think everybody needs it, sort of thing.